Hello and welcome back. My name is John Rose, and in today's video I'd like to share with you guys what I call the science and art of healing, or the science and art of solving problems that are 100% within our control. Now this is based on over 28 and a half years of extensive research and analysis, and I have a very unique way of explaining all of this, and I try to make it as simple as possible. I've been studying everybody for 28 years who thinks they have a solution, not just to health, but everything. And I do a comparative analysis, and I take the best of what they got. I try to understand why they agree on things and why they disagree. And then I come back and I add my own to that, and I come up with my own version. The science and the art. It's real simple, folks. We have 12 essential needs, 2 additional temporary needs. Science and the art. It's really simple. We have anatomical limitations that we're given at birth. We have anatomical limitations based on the damage we've done to both ourselves and the environment. The science and the art. 12 essential, 2 additional. Anatomical limitations for birth, anatomical limitations by the damage we've done. It's simple, my friends. Once we understand these anatomical limitations, then we realize that there's a oneness of disease. And then there's a uniqueness of disease. A lot of people get confused because they think, I'm eating just like my wife and she's got that problem, I got this problem. Well, we all can't manifest the hundreds of thousands of problems or warning signs that we have from making these mistakes, not satisfying these 2 groups of needs. And once we understand that there's a oneness of disease, that it only appears to be contagious because everyone has it, colds and flus, but what we need, once you understand that, is that all we now need is to have that knowledge of those needs, knowledge of how to live, but we also need knowledge of how to adapt. That's the key, and it's a hard piece of the puzzle for a lot of us to understand. And it explains why disease seems to be such a mystery. Now, it's a huge mystery to our so-called experts. They have no idea what's going on. They're not taught why the body's doing things. They understand technically what's going on, but they're very incompetent and understanding really what's happening and how things are messing up. They just don't get it, and they probably never will since they've been put inside that box. But they could come out of that box just as easily as you guys come if they simply tested an idea as time has come. Satisfy these 12 essential needs, especially the 5 main mistakes that we're making relative to one of those needs. Just do that on a temporary basis so you can then see what you're missing. Now that's not going to be enough. The 5 mistakes we're making is only one of those 12 essential needs. And then we've got these other 2 additional temporary needs because we've damaged ourselves in the environment. As a result, we have 10 subsequent needs because we're sick and disconnected. But then we have subsequent causes that don't go away just because we remove the primary causes. So when we satisfy those 12 essential needs, we're removing the primary causes. And if we understand how our body's damaged and the environment's damaged, then we know how to deal with those subsequent causes. Again, oneness of disease, uniqueness of disease, anatomical limitations. Born with them. We did it. And a lot of us, our ancestors have been doing it so long, we're born with it. And now we have another group of needs that we shouldn't have. And of course, I mentioned this many times. People born in Norway who've been eating so much fish that provides a level 2 nutrient that we're supposed to be able to make when we don't eat so much fish. It has now become a subsequent need for them, or a subsequent cause that they have to address. Their body's no longer able to make DHA. But the same thing can happen to us on a short-term basis. We can become dependent on our bad choices. And a lot of people go back to their old ways, not understanding that you can't just apply the science, you have to apply the art. But most importantly, you never apply the art without the science, and that's the biggest mistake the world is making. Never apply the art without the science, and no one can apply the science because we don't have knowledge of how to live. And knowledge of how to live is based on the law of cause and effect. That's linear. Knowledge of how to adapt is based on the ripple effect. That's circular. Linear, cause and effect. It's simple. The things we do to ourselves is what creates most of those illnesses and ill behaviors. It's so simple. Remove the primary causes and most of us won't have any problems. But what if we live in a place where we can't get everything we need? We can't eat the right food, don't get enough sunshine. What if the food we get in the grocery store isn't any good? All we have to do, folks, is just nurture those darn trees of life that we have a symbiotic relationship with. But unfortunately, we've altered those trees of life. The chemical revolution, the fifth of those 5 mistakes I always mention, has ruined this planet when it comes to our food. Growing food on artificial fertilizers, spraying them with pesticides. There are a lot of factors that go into understanding the uniqueness of disease. People my age won't have the same type of problems that people younger have. Likewise, the previous generation to me are not going to have a lot of problems that we now see because the chemical revolution didn't kick in until the 40s. So for someone like my mom, who would turn 100 in almost a month if she was still alive, grew up in a time where they didn't use chemicals. And as Dr. Joel Fuhrman points out in his book, Disease Proof Your Child, those first 10 years are really critical to the upbringing of our children. Because as children, our cells are opening and growing, opening and closing. They're growing rapidly. Adult cells are more like the inside of a golf ball. It's all tightly wrapped up with rubber bands. If you've ever seen cut up a golf ball, I think they might make them different now, but I cut them open a long time ago. That's what was in it. But now, these little children, they're open and closing. So when they're exposed to these poisons, it does serious damage that sets them up for life. Real important that we don't use chemicals with our little children. And we shouldn't have any chemicals to begin with. God, when you think about this world, we shouldn't have any illnesses. We shouldn't have any ill behaviors. Debt and liability should not even exist. This planet should be as full of assets. We should all be loving and giving and caring. And that could happen if we just had knowledge of how to live, so we'd eat the right food. And also understand that we might not succeed with that unless we also have knowledge of how to adapt. So what do we see now on YouTube? We see a lot of people who tried one approach and they're going back to the other approach. Well, most of those people were correcting all 5 mistakes. Talking about vegetarians. So many vegetarians aren't that healthy. They corrected the second big mistake, and that's a big mistake, and that's going to help a lot of people. But as long as you make those other 3 mistakes, plants are not biologically adapted to eat, processed foods, ooh, that's a big one. And then those darn chemicals. That's why so many vegetarians fail at this, and you see it all the time on YouTube. Oh, I'm going to go back to adding the second mistake in because I didn't do very good. Well, quit making that 4th mistake. Quit making that 3rd mistake. Quit making that 5th mistake. But if you want to get to the root of everything, quit making the dang 1st mistake. That's the cooking of our food. But wait a second. You hear about people who went raw and it didn't work for them. Well, why is that? Well, a raw vegan diet is our ideal diet in an ideal world. We no longer live in an ideal world. We have 2 groups of needs. The environment's been damaged. We're living in places where we can't get sunshine. And you love the arguments people say, well, John, you're just not realistic. The world can't feed 7 billion people on raw food. Well, ever heard of supply and demand? You go to the demand first. Once we have the demand for these foods, the supply will follow. You can't look at this without looking further and realize, of course we can't feed the planet now the kind of food we're supposed to eat. Because no one wants it. Why would we have all that food if no one wanted it? Unless we didn't mess up the environment and it was growing like it's supposed to everywhere. So we got to nurture those trees of life. We have to realize that we've been damaging them, and now these trees of life are altered. Got to make that soil better. Got to stop using chemicals. Got to stop loaning money at interest. Got to do away with money completely. And we can do that ultimately if we can get enough of us to wake up and realize that huge raw food, cooked food connection to everything. Remember, 5 main mistakes we're making relative to one of those 12 essential needs. All we have to do to solve virtually every illness and ill behavior is satisfy those 2 groups of needs. The big one that we're making, we got to correct all of our mistakes. The big one we're making up there, among those 12 essential needs, got me a termite crawling on me. He's still on me. Where is he? There he goes. Satisfy those 12 essential needs. And then the food, where we're making those 5 big mistakes, is only one of them. Emotions, mental, all those are important. When you look around the world, all the great religions, they all have the same hierarchy. And what's at the base of that hierarchy? It's the physical. If you don't have a strong base, the emotions, the mental, the spiritual, all of those are going to struggle. Just like Tolstoy understood this. Remember, Tolstoy wanted to be known for his views on religion and not his other books like War and Peace and Anna Karenina. And he wrote that great foreword, that 25-page essay to the greatest book ever, The Ethics of Diet by Howard Williams. Translated the book, Tolstoy did, into Russian, wrote this 25-page essay called The First Step. It's like climbing the stairs to the second level of a house where bottom level is evil, don't know how to live. Evil lives well backwards. You got to go the first step, and as Tolstoy points out, it's all about self-control. We have none. Christians call it self-renunciation. And many times they focus on those higher steps, the higher virtues, saying, look how good I am. But you know what? If you just did the first step, all those other virtues and steps would be an automatic. We don't realize that. Tolstoy understood it. He knew our problem. We don't have any control. We're gluttons. I mean, look at the vast majority of people around you. All of their dietary mistakes are reflected in their flesh. You can see it. And it's a sad reflection of where we are as a species, where we don't even understand the real meaning of we are what we eat. And yet pretty much everyone will agree with that. But that's about as far as it goes. They don't put much thought into it. But I have come up with a 3-step process. Because the only thing we have to do is satisfy 2 groups of needs, but most of us aren't willing and able to do that. That's why I have those 2 preliminary steps. First step addresses the willingness issue, just like Tolstoy did with his first step. My first step is a solid food vacation, not on water as Tolstoy did, but on juices to make it easier so that we can do this and still continue to work and fulfill all of our financial responsibilities and our family responsibilities. We don't have to take a complete vacation from life as we do on a solid food vacation on water. But it's the first thing we have to do. We have to see what we're missing. Because most of us aren't going to agree that some of those mistakes are mistakes. You're going to insist nothing wrong with mistake number 2. It made us great. No, it didn't. It's what made our brains double in size. No, our brains doubled in size long before we mastered any of those 5 bad applications, or any of those 5 things we mastered that turned into 5 bad applications. Remember, anytime we discover something, we have new technology or we have new knowledge, there's always that potential to make a bad application. So it's like, hey, it has a potential for evil if I apply it to those things that we need to live. And that's exactly what happened to us as our species. And you see this reflected in ancient stories in the Essene Gospel, or the Essene teachings from Enoch to the Dead Sea Scrolls, where Moses explains how he found this knowledge, one law, how to live, and that's the cause to all of our problems. And what was the obstacle that he pointed out? Same obstacle I have and everyone else has on the hero's journey. It's the ignorant masses and the arrogant rulers. Long ago, we've known what's going on, and the story's been told over and over and over. I just did a video recently and lost a lot of subscribers because of it. The quest for the historical Jesus. And it saddens me to think that people love Jesus so much, and yet they are hesitant to see, well, what was he teaching? What was his whole life all about? It goes back to Moses. They all understood we're violating God's laws, nature's laws of nature, however you want to call it. And we have a feedback system. So if you're suffering in any way from an illness or an ill behavior, if you're suffering emotionally and physically, realize that you have all of those needs. If you're not sleeping good, you're going to struggle, because that's when we heal. If you're not getting sunshine, you're going to struggle. If you're not moving your body and exercise, you're going to struggle. If you don't bump up those biophotons, you're really going to struggle. And yet, I reflect back on my life and I think, you know, John, I had a 20-pound cesspool in me. The serpent that Victor Hugo called, that disrupts the equilibrium between the mind and the soul. And no telling how low my biophoton levels were. That coherent sunlight energy that's faster than the speed of light that's in the nucleus of our cells that allows us to feel connected to everyone, because it's our spidey sense, our sixth sense. No telling how low that was, and yet I was a great guy. So I can understand how difficult this is when the average person who hasn't put any thought into this at all and can't see the connections I've made. Because they look around and they say, well, wait a second, look at these people. They're the worst. I mean, they're the best on the planet, and they're eating horribly. Well, they're the exception. Bell-shaped curve. You have to understand a little bit about statistics to understand things. Pretty much a lot of things are going to fit in this bell-shaped curve, where 96% are in the middle. Then we have 2% or so on one side and 2% on the other. So sure, we can have everybody eating bad food, and we have the saints over here. Look at them. If they're eating bad food, so can I. Hey, I'm real close to them. I'm on that side of the bell, or I'm more in the middle. I'm so far in the middle, or on this side, I can't even relate to them. But hey, I'm real close to this other side where we have those psychopaths. I can relate to those. I'll be their flunkies. I'll join the deep state, sell my soul, make a bunch of money, just to protect the ones above you that are in charge, that are keeping us in the hell we're in. It's a lot like we're a bunch of crabs inside this container and trying to get out, and everyone keeps crawling another guy down. Is this the same guy that crawled on me a little while ago? Isn't that pathetic? We're yanking the other person down. Did I get rid of him? But that's what it's like, isn't it? It reminds me, darn it, there he is again. It reminds me, I don't know what it reminds me of anymore. I was so distracted on that one. What does it remind me of? What was I going to say? Reminds me of a lot of things. Reminds me of Ishmael. That's not where I was going with this, though. But I might as well. It still fits. That great book written by Daniel Quinn, Ishmael. He said that there are takers in the world and there are leavers. And the leavers believe that they belonged with the world, but the takers believe the world belonged to them. And the leavers told a story to warn everybody about the takers, but then the takers took that story and changed it and flipped it and said they're the takers, we're the leavers. And the reason why this fits is because we have to see this connection about how we're being ruled and how we're being controlled, how our so-called experts in every area of health, logic, medicine, history, even science, they've been misdirected by this sick, small group of people who are part of those psychopaths. And again, reflecting back, I was a great guy, despite the amount of crap I had inside my body and how little sunlight energy I had. I was still a great guy. And I know it's hard to understand what those psychopaths are doing, and that's why they get away with it. Unless you're really close to that side of the bell, you can't really even understand how those kind of people even think. And remember, we don't want a revolution doesn't come from attacking something that's against us. It comes from bringing forth what we're trying to say. But we can't bury our heads in our sand. When we're on the hero's journey, one of the stages on the hero's journey is to understand our obstacles. So if you're on the hero's journey and you're trying to explain things to people, a lot of people are going to have a hard time understanding things unless they really have a better understanding of those psychopaths that are sick and disconnected. They're lacking biophotons. They have a cesspool in their body. And it's just like crack cocaine. When we started cooking our food and started eating foods we're not biologically adapted to eat, it changed our mentality. And now we're addicted to these mistakes. And what happens when someone goes or is addicted to something? They run to denial to protect those pleasures. And that's what's happened to us, my friends. They call it unrealistic optimism. They did a study back in 2011. It's published online October 9, 2011. They called it unrealistic optimism. Hooked up a bunch of people up to MRIs and asked them 80 questions. And if they went someplace they didn't want to go, they just shut their brain off. So this is kind of what happens. This is sort of one of the horrible symptoms we have by cooking our food. It's just like doing crack cocaine. When you do crack cocaine, it damages part of the brain that does the critical thinking. So you end up making bad choices when you get into a horrible drug like crack cocaine. But cooked food is a lot worse drug than that because it damages our brain the same way. It keeps it from working the same reason because it shuts off that frontal lobe. But then these people who are psychopaths, when they're born this way, their brain is wired different. They have no empathy. They can be actually quite bright in many ways, but they have no empathy. And that's what sets them apart. They also have no creativity. That's why they need us so much, is to steal our creativity. So what do we do to solve every problem there is in the world? Realize two groups of needs, anatomical limitations. We're born with them. We've done something. That's the science and the art. Law of cause and effect, ripple effect. Linear cause and effect, circular, ripple effect, effects become causes. A oneness of disease, a uniqueness of disease. All we have to do is nurture the trees of life, but we have to have knowledge of how to live to do that. But then we have to have this knowledge of how to adapt, because now we've altered those trees of life. And that's it. 3 steps. Third step is satisfy those 2 groups of needs, and most of us aren't willing and able to do it. Don't have the ability, don't have the knowledge of how to live, and the knowledge of how to adapt. But most importantly, even if we had it, we wouldn't apply it. So we have to do something that we're willing to apply. That's what my solid food vacation on juices accomplishes. It gives us a chance to see what we're missing. Just testing ideas as time has come is all you have to do. And then once you correct these 5 main mistakes on a temporary basis, then we have to take it 1 step further and correct them on a permanent basis. That's the second step. But while we're correcting these 5 mistakes, we have to make sure and put those onto our list of other mistakes we have to make or correct. 12 essential needs. Air, water, food, sunshine, exercise, sleep. Our thoughts, our feelings, our community, spirituality. You have to be free from things outside of control. We have to procreate. And those are the 11 ways we interact in and with the environment. And number 12 is the environment itself. It's one of our essential needs. It represents our external metabolism. All we have to do basically to heal most of our illnesses and ill behaviors is to improve the quality of our environment and the way we interact with it, realizing that we've damaged our environment, we've damaged ourselves, got another group of needs, maybe at a point where certain organs aren't producing certain things, so you have to supplement your body, hopefully only on a temporary basis, because most of the damage we've done is just temporary impairment. But there is a point of irreversibility, which means there is a possibility that permanent damage can occur. So we don't want to waste any time when it comes to this. We don't want to wait till, oh my God, my appendix is about to burst. I had a friend's wife having this happen to her the other day. And I'm thinking, God, if you just done what I told you a long time ago, you would believe in what I'm saying. And you wouldn't even consider going under the knife for an operation that in most cases is not needed. Remember, when the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem you see is a nail. That's what happens with our medical profession. They've given a box, a black box of magic that only has a few tools in it. Drugs and surgery. That's not the answer. For problems that are outside of control, you bet. Thank God we've got people who study the anatomy and chemistry and pharmaceutics can help sew us back up if we get in a car accident or there's a natural catastrophe or something. But otherwise, we've got a system that's treating symptoms for lifestyle-related problems. That probably represents about 90% of their stock and trade. And that doesn't even talk about getting into the absurdity of something like vaccines. Whew, I tell you, Voltaire knew what he was talking about. Every man is a creature of the age in which he lives. Very few are able to rise above the ideas of the time. Instead, we just glide with the stream of the crowd, don't we? Just keep doing the same thing over and over. There's a oneness of disease. Oh, everybody gets cold and flu. The colds and flus are going around. I just caught it. No, you eat it. I've done a lot of videos on that. I'll put links down below. I know that's a hard one to overcome. A lot of these old beliefs are hard to overcome because of Satan's secret weapon. Video I did a while back. We've got so many books of baloney in our brain that have so many pages, meaning references, that support that belief, that it's hard to really understand the truth and accept it when it comes along. So, how do you make any sense out of this? Believe only your own experience. There is no fact like a fact learned from your own life, as Ariel Durant would say. And how do you do that? Well, you test an idea as time has come. And you know the reason why we do that by now, if you watched any of my videos. Come on, say it with me. You're in for a treat.